All right, we are back with Alan Brochstein. He is a MarketFi maven, author of the 420 Investor, which you can find on marketfi.com. Alan, how you doing this morning?
I am doing great. Looking forward to the end of this year and hopefully, at least for the cannabis market, a much better year in 2016.
All right. What are you seeing? I guess we'll start with shorter term this week. What are you seeing recently in the sector? What kind of trends?
So this year's been a very tough year for the sector. I've been pretty negative on most of the stocks. They trade on the OTC. Most of them aren't too real, but even for some of the ones that do seem to have some reality to them, almost all the stocks are down this year. I spent a lot of time focusing on GW Pharma. That's really the most institutional name in the sector, and even that stock, as of this minute, is down year to date, tracking the biotech market. And we can talk about that more in a few minutes because there's been some developments there. But one area that's been very interesting of late has been Canada. And there hasn't been a lot going on this week, but I want to make sure we talk about that as well because that's really been the big story of 2015. And I think it's going to be an even bigger story in 2016.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Canada certainly is a major player. We're seeing in the marijuana industry now. It's a pretty speculative sector, correct?
Oh my God,
Yeah,
it
okay.
doesn't get any more
Yeah,
speculative.
okay. So how do you, if somebody wanted to maybe get in to cannabis stocks, what would you say to them?
I'd say, are you crazy? No, I'm just kidding. So I started 420 Investor in September of 2013, and when I took that title, I was like, because I was pretty negative on, then on most of the sector, and unfortunately, the same problems then are today. So the number one thing I would say, Spencer, is be very, very careful. That's what 420 Investor is all about. Making sure everybody understands that even the companies that are real, because of the OTC nature of the
Right.
industry right now, it's a real problem. So we point out even the stocks that I like are probably going to struggle. Raising capital is really hard. So that's the first thing I would say. So, we try to take a longer term view, and hopefully the market will develop a little bit better. We don't have enough time to go over the whole history, but 2014 was a rocket ship when Colorado went legal and all the speculative money piled into the sector, and then it just, it's been fizzling out ever since then, even though there have been a few real um, developments or advancements, companies that have generated really tremendous sales considering where they were coming from. So I think right now the sentiment is just horrible. So it's actually possible that some of these OTC stocks can make people money, but most of them probably not.
Can you talk about some of those developments that have been able to raise money?
So, well, I mean, I'll start with one. There's a company, Massroots, and so this is the classic problem. I think it's a good idea, a good company, and coming at it from the top. One of the biggest problems facing, and the symbol there, I'm sorry, is MSRT. Uh, One of the big problems facing the whole cannabis industry is the lack of ability to advertise through traditional channels. A really timely example is the U.S. Postal Service recently ruled that newspapers that print ads for medical marijuana in states that are legal, and these newspapers are mailed, typically to rural type of people. That's against U.S. Postal Service laws. Now, that's not that big of a deal, but it just kind of shows you the reality. A bigger deal, Instagram. If you get big on Instagram, if you're a dispensary and you have a 10,000 to 15,000 following, they will just shut you down without notice. And uh, so it's very difficult for people to advertise. So Massroots has come up with a closed system uh, where it's semi-anonymous. You can use your own name, but I'm really big on LinkedIn, and I don't care what people think. But we live in a society where there is a lot of stigma and judgment. So people might not want to say they're in the cannabis industry, even if they are. So within a closed system like Massroots, one is able to share pretty freely. So they collect just a ton of data, and they just started monetizing. Don't want to spend too much time talking about it. I just want to mention is an example of a company that's made a lot of progress. They just started to monetize. The revenues aren't really substantial yet, but they've added, I forget where they were a year ago, but they're up to 675,000 registered users.
Hmm.
They've been adding, 50 to 60,000 a month. And so I see that they've made progress on that front, on their technology, starting to monetize. A lot of progress, real progress. And they've raised capital. That was really your question. They did an S1 instead of a reverse merger. They raised capital at successively higher rounds. But let everybody be aware, it's a very expensive stock. I forget the exact number I'm using, but on a fully diluted basis, probably about 70 million shares. So you're talking about, it's a pretty high market cap. But some of their peers, Leafly and Weedmaps, they're private, so it's hard to verify this, but supposedly generate sales of, like 2 million a month, 24 million a year. The stock could work, but they have a lot of work to do.
So, like you said, advertising is obviously a major issue for marijuana companies right now. But what other parts of the industry do you see really developing next year?
So I think their technology is really the big answer to that
Okay.
question. And you can break it down into different areas. You can break it down into, you have to comply. If you can't comply, you're going to lose your license. So any sort of company that helps companies comply, uh, that would be one area. Another big area right now is energy costs. And there's a lot of talk going on. I've even seen it in mainstream magazines like Fortune, where, look, the black market really sucks up energy when it makes cannabis, but there's no real studies or measures of that. But in the light of day, everybody sees how indoor grows are huge energy hogs. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of negative attention right now, even though they probably use less. In other words, shifting from the black market to the white market or to the legal market doesn't really make a difference. It actually probably helps because of the more attention on energy efficiency. But long story short, I think that two things are going to happen. We're seeing it already, a shift to different types of grow. Outdoor is not necessarily feasible, but you have greenhouse technology. So that would be a technology area, greenhouse, and also companies that can reduce energy costs. And there is one of these OTC stocks. I actually like this one, SRNA. They're based in Boulder, ticker SRNA. Stock's been on a roller coaster, and it's suffered from a lot of penny stock type issues that are pretty much behind it.
Yeah.
They they need some access to capital, but there's a company that had I think 2 million or more than 2 million in sales last quarter. Huge sales for what the market cap is right now on an annualized basis. By my own projections and incorporating some of their publicly stated goals, it's possible they could have about 15 million in sales next year. And I think the share count could go up, but it's probably trading at about that market cap on a higher share count that I would use. That's the thing with these penny stocks, the share count's always going up.
So I guess if you're going to be bullish, you could say that the opportunity is clearly there for these companies. It's just a matter of making money at this point.
Yeah, and I'd say it's really important for people to understand the real opportunities are probably in the private market. A lot of the public companies, you know, even if they're uh, legitimate, which the ones I mentioned I certainly believe are legitimate. Like I said, the access to capital can be really tough.
Right.
So the private market doesn't have the same valuations. The valuations are higher in the public market. A little bit less pressure on the companies to perform in that kind of way to put up really big numbers. So I think to the extent that people can invest in privates, it's probably better. But unfortunately, that limits the investor universe dramatically. You have to be accredited, which means $1 million of assets, excluding your home, or income of 200,000 or 300,000 family.
Right. You mentioned earlier that biotechs could maybe have some sort of an impact on things. Do you, any?
So, there's a couple of biotechs that are actually using the plant as opposed to synthetics. So there's been synthetic marijuana for a long time. It's never really been shown to work. It may work better for some of these other formats, but the ones synthetic THC has had problems. Synthetic CBD, maybe it works, but leaving that aside, the the most investable name in the space is a super risky investment. It's GW Pharma. I talk about it fairly regularly here. When I was on last time at the end of October, I pointed out in the summer when it was peaking out, I sold about 3/4 of the position in my model portfolio. I was concerned about the overall biotech market and also some news specific to the company. And since then, the news came out and that I was worried about. And I don't think it was, like I said, I was expecting. I don't think it was really that bad of news, but it involved their original drug, Sativex. But the story is really about Epidiolex, which is in phase 3 trials right now. And so there's a lot going on with GW Pharma. The company has over 20 million shares essentially outstanding. It trades dual listed, but I'm talking about just looking at GWPH, if converting everything to US. A little bit over 20 million shares. So it's still like about a 1.3 market cap. And I don't think anything's really changed recently, but there's been a little bit of a delay in the enrollment for these phase 3 trials. And so the bottom line is it appears based on a lot of evidence, but not clinical trials, that the Epidiolex can help not every patient, but a lot of patients that suffer from rare pediatric epilepsy. They call it treatment resistant. So the safety profile seems to be okay based on, I mean, I'm not a doctor, and so I wouldn't go by that, but what I read, there don't appear to be too many safety issues, especially compared to the other drugs that are used. The efficacy, just comes down to, is the FDA going to bless it? I'm going to stand by what I say. If the FDA approves that drug, which it should, that should happen by early 2017, I think the stock's going to like 180 or something like that. So, but if it's an epic fail, the stock's going down into the 20s, in my opinion.
Before I let you go, Rob Hood in the chat wants to know if you have an update on TerraTech.
On TerraTech, well, so that's another example of what I think is a real company. They've gotten a lot of licenses, but they've really had trouble this year accessing capital. So uh, the update would be, I would say that they've really done a good job of rolling out their brand in California. Their brand is called IVXX, and they're going to use that brand in Nevada as well. And as maybe not everybody's aware, but California has had legal cannabis for 2 decades, but it's never been regulated properly, and that's about to change. And that's really going to, I think, be good for businesses in general. And TerraTech has the potential to be a big player in California, but they're going to have to, that's going to cost more money or shares, however you look at it. So I like that story among the penny stock ones, but I throw all the penny stock warnings on it. So that's the update there. I think they're moving ahead nicely.
All right, we've been talking to Alan Brochstein, a market find maven, author of the 420 Investor. Alan, love your takes, your analysis on the cannabis sector. As always, you're the guy for us. So we'll have you on. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, have a happy new year and
You
enjoy
too.
your new
Have a
headquarters.
good. Thank you. We are have a good one.
All right.
All right. It is 9:31 now. Markets are open. Do want to preview tomorrow's show? Like we said, tomorrow is a half day of trading. We'll be on in the morning though. We got you covered. Larry McDonald will be on. He's a best-selling author, managing director of U.S. Macro Strategies Group at Societe Generale, and we'll also be joined by Phil Davis, who is the founder of Phil's Stock.